The kettle on the stove doesn't whistle. It breathes. A steady, thin hiss of steam that signals precisely 208 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't need a thermometer. After 42 years of balancing the ledgers for the Quartermaster Corps, I have developed a biological clock that measures time in grains of sand. I sat at my mahogany desk, the wood scarred by decades of inkpots and heavy ledgers. My fingers, stiffened slightly by the damp Georgia air but still precise, moved across the surface of a 19th century silver tea caddy. Most people see a dusty box. I see a provenance, a lineage of ownership that stretches back to a silversmith in London, 1842. The air in my house in Savannah is thick. It smells of beeswax, dried lavender, and the sharp, acidic tang of old paper. To the uninitiated, my home looks like a labyrinth of clutter. To me, it is a perfectly indexed library of assets. There are boxes stacked to the molding, yes, but each one is numbered. Each one contains a piece of history that has been vetted, appraised, and logged into the black leather binder that never leaves my side. In the military, they taught us that information is the only currency that doesn't devalue. If you know exactly what is in the warehouse, you can never be robbed. The peace of the morning died the moment the front door slammed. The vibration rattled the crystal drops on the chandelier, a sharp, dissonant chime that made the skin on the back of my neck prickle. Oh my God, guys, do you feel the energy in here? It's so heavy. It's like the air is struggling to move under the weight of it all. The voice was high, nasal, and curated. My granddaughter Chloe didn't walk into a room. She invaded it. I heard the frantic clicking of her heels on the hardwood, a cheap plastic sound, and the intrusive glow of her phone's ring light before I saw her face. She rounded the corner into the study, the lens of her iPhone pointed directly at me like a weapon. She was 22, dressed in sweatpants that cost more than a month of my pension, her face painted into a mask of perpetual concern. "Quote 1, she whispered, her voice thick with performative pity. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 2, underscore, underscore. I didn't look up. I dipped my fountain pen into the inkwell. The metallic scent of the ink was grounding. My chest felt tight, a dull ache behind the ribs that comes when you realize your own blood sees you as a relic to be cleared away. "It is 9:15, Chloe," I said, my voice dry and level. "You were supposed to be here at 8 to help with the garden." "The garden? Honey, I'm just so worried about your stamina out there." She panned the camera around the room, zooming in on a stack of Victorian-era lace collars I had just finished cataloging. "It's about quality of life, you guys. #eldercare. Grams, I know you think these old rags are treasures, but wouldn't you be much happier in a clean, professional suite at the village? Somewhere you don't have to carry the weight of all this history alone?" She gave a soft sigh that didn't reach her eyes. She reached out a manicured hand, her long acrylic nail snagging on the delicate lace of a collar that had survived the Civil War. She yanked it. I heard the faint, sickening pop of a thread. The taste of copper filled my mouth. I stayed still. I didn't yell. In the Corps, you don't scream at the enemy. You simply note their position and wait for them to overextend. I said softly. Chloe rolled her eyes at the lens. She spun around, her oversized tote bag knocking a small porcelain figurine off the side table. It shattered against the floor, a 1920s Meissen Harlequin. $100 of history turned into white grit in a second. Chloe didn't even look down at the wreckage. She was too busy checking her engagement metrics. I looked at the shards on the floor. Then I looked at the black binder on my desk. Chloe thought I was a confused old woman drowning in clutter. She didn't realize that every box she mocked was a line item in a ledger she wasn't smart enough to read. Later that evening, I sat alone. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A notification from my nephew. Then another. Then a link. I opened it. The video was titled, "The Heartbreak of Hoarding, A Family's Struggle." In the clip, Chloe whispered to the camera. She'd caught a moment where I was squinting at a receipt, my brow furrowed, and added a caption in bright pink letters. "She doesn't even know what year it is. So sad. Hashtag dementia awareness." The view count was a string of numbers that blurred before my eyes. 1.2 million. My stomach didn't drop, it curdled. I didn't cry. My tear ducts had dried up years ago during the audit of '94. Instead, I felt the familiar cold clarity that comes with a tactical breach. Chloe wasn't just being a cruel girl. She was building a public case for my incompetence. The next morning, Chloe left her designer tote bag on the kitchen counter while she went to fetch her sunglasses. I reached into the bag. My fingers brushed past lip gloss until they hit the crisp weight of legal bond paper. I pulled it out just far enough to read the header. State of Georgia, in the probate court of Chatham County. Petition for permanent guardianship and conservatorship. The words carried the weight of a guillotine blade. The filing claimed I was incapable of managing my own affairs. Then I saw the attachment. A printout of a bank statement. Not hers, mine. There were dozens of small, incremental transactions through Apple Pay. $49.99, $89, $120. Each one was labeled with the names of high-end boutiques and influencer growth services. She hadn't just linked her phone to my retirement account. She'd been harvesting me. I slid the papers back into the bag and stepped away. Chloe returned, blew me a kiss that smelled of artificial vanilla, and vanished through the door. I walked back to my study and picked up my Parker pen. The weight of it was substantial, a weapon of precision. I didn't write a letter of protest. I began to cross-reference every Apple Pay timestamp with the metadata of her social media uploads. Chloe wanted to play the role of the concerned granddaughter while eyeing my estate. She had forgotten one thing. I wasn't just a grandmother. I was a military auditor, someone who once logged the costs of lost limbs in sterile wards. I knew how to follow the money, and I knew exactly how to make it disappear. I spent the first 4 hours of the morning calculating. Then I picked up the heavy phone book and dialed a number I hadn't called in 15 years. "Frank," I said when the line picked up, "it's Martha Vance. The quartermaster's ghost is calling in a favor." Frank was an estate attorney who knew where every skeleton in Savannah was buried. We met 2 hours later. I laid out the ledgers. I showed him the guardianship petition. "How deep do you want the hole to be, Martha?" he asked. Deep enough that she can't see the light, I replied. We spent the afternoon restructuring my living trust. I moved every liquid asset into a shielded military-grade annuity. I stripped her mother from the executorship. The next day, a white van pulled into my gravel driveway. 3 men stepped out. To a neighbor, they looked like a mold remediation crew. In reality, they were appraisers from the Smithsonian. I led them past the distressing clutter. I moved a stack of newspapers to reveal a flat, cedar-lined map case. Inside were original hand-drawn cartographies of the Georgia coastline from 1864. I opened a nondescript shoebox to reveal letters penned by the hands of the Founding Fathers. This unmanaged risk is worth more than a dozen of the mansions on this street combined, Martha, the lead appraiser whispered, his hands shaking slightly. If she had succeeded in that guardianship, she would have sold these at a yard sale for pennies. She won't, I said. I gave them the items for safekeeping, effectively moving my net worth out of the house and into the vaults of a federal institution. The house looked exactly the same to the untrained eye, but the gold was gone, replaced by empty shells. The audit was complete. Now I just had to wait for the final balance. The courthouse air was a blend of floor wax and refrigerated marble. Chloe sat 3 benches away, dressed in a muted charcoal dress that screamed, performing grief. She had her phone propped up, the lens angled to catch the quiver of her lip. The petitioner alleges, Judge Sterling began, that Martha Vance is suffering from advanced cognitive decline and is unable to manage a hazardous hoarding environment. Chloe stood up, dabbing at a dry eye. It's about quality of life, Your Honor. We just want her in a clean, professional suite where she doesn't have to carry the weight of all this history alone. Frank stood up beside me. Your Honor, we would like to submit a final audit. The room went silent. First, Frank said, a psychiatric evaluation performed yesterday by the Chief of Staff at the Veterans Hospital. Mrs. Vance scored in the 99th percentile for cognitive function. Second, the security footage. He turned a monitor toward the judge. It was high-definition video from the hidden cameras I'd installed months ago. There was Chloe, smashing the Meissen Harlequin. And then Chloe's own voice discussing her strategy to liquidate the burden and monetize the estate the moment she committed me. Chloe's mouth hung open. The skin of her neck turned a blotchy, panicked red. And finally, Frank said, dropping a thick stack of spreadsheets onto the table, the financial reconciliation. My client has tracked every cent stolen from her accounts. The total, including the destruction of artifacts, exceeds $80,000. That is a felony, Your Honor. The judge looked at Chloe. This isn't a guardianship hearing anymore, he said softly. This is a criminal referral. I stood up, my bones creaking, and looked the judge in the eye. Your Honor, to ensure my life's work is never again threatened by such calculated concern, I have signed a deed of gift. As of 10 minutes ago, the entire Vance collection has been transferred to the Smithsonian Institution. I have retained a life estate to live in the home as its curator. There is no inheritance. There is only history, and it is now property of the United States government. The sound of the judge's gavel was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. The sound of a ledger being closed. I walked out of the courtroom. Behind me, I heard the frantic clicking of heels. Grams! Grandma, wait! Chloe was sobbing for real now. You can't do this! We're family! I was trying to build a brand to fund your transition. You're going to let them arrest me? I stopped at the top of the marble stairs. I felt a cool, empty clarity. The familiar metallic readiness for a tactical strike had finally fulfilled its purpose. Justice, I said, not turning around, is a dish best served by the rules of the audit. You're overdrawn on your performative concern, Chloe, and I don't offer credit to thieves. I descended the stairs, leaving her screaming at my back. She was a ghost now, a liability purged from the ledger, and I had work to do. Like this story if you think Martha balanced the books perfectly.